Alright, thanks for joining me. This is primarily going to be a review of Captain Marvel. I saw it the Friday it came out. Took me about a week to process it all, and I just feel like getting my thoughts out there. Seeing if you agree, disagree, like maybe you didn't notice some things, maybe you think I'm reading too much, feel free to let me know. Before I get started with that, I just want to give you a heads up. If you're into these Marvel Legends figures, Walgreens currently has them for $14 for the rest of March, and if you're lucky, you might be able to find the Mystique from the X-Men figures or line, but I have not found her yet. Okay, so let's talk about Captain Marvel. There will be spoilers in this, so if you do not want something ruined, stop watching now. Um, Before I get underway, if you enjoyed this movie, I'm very happy for you. On my way out, I noticed like there was a line of people to come in for the next showing, and there was a girl there, maybe about 7th grade age. She's wearing her Captain Marvel shirt, and I thought that was really cool. I hope she had a fun time watching it, and I'm sure it was right up her alley. But most of my video here is going to be very negative towards it because I felt kind of offended. And the thing is, people are like, oh, you read too much into these things. No, the thing is, these movies are written, and these people that are paid to write these movies know exactly what they're trying to convey. There's lines and things that happen that are not a mistake. And this movie, in my opinion, was very pro-woman, which is fine. Wonder Woman was pro-woman. But they also had males in it that were positive, like Chris Pine's character, or the group she's with during the war. It was not a hate fest against men. Whereas I felt that Captain Marvel, well, I wouldn't call it a hate fest, but they definitely took some shots at men. And I'll get into that later. But, alright, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the music. It's very much a bite off of Guardians of the Galaxy, but with 90s music instead of 70s music. I think it's set in 1994. We find out in the movie that Carol Danvers, that's Captain Marvel, 6 years beforehand had been captured by the Kree and had amnesia and was brainwashed. Well, that would have meant like the time she was taken from Earth would have been about 1988. They show in scenes that she's wearing like Guns N' Roses shirts, stuff like that. It's like really cool stuff for especially for the era. But the music we hear in this movie, it's like anything from like the 94 era. It's just like TLC, Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls, Salt and Pepper, No Doubt, Breeders, Garbage, almost exclusively female vocals, which I kind of respect in a way. I grew up during the era, and, like in high school and all that, and so I'm very familiar with the songs and I like them. But what I don't like is that, like in Guardians of the Galaxy, the songs we hear are like, and very much most of the time, it's actually supposed to be playing on Star-Lord's like tape. And it's not all the time, but a lot of times. And these are songs that are connected to his character deeply through his mother, like, the bond and everything. We've all seen the movie, most likely. If you haven't, please go see it. So it's more than just a good soundtrack. It is a connection to the character. So it really irritates me that, like, we've got this 1994 stuff playing while she's fighting, and it's like, or doing whatever, and it's like, the character wouldn't even know this music. Like, her stuff would have been from 1988 or some kind of Kree music or something. So it really felt like we forced or something. And there's also at one point Gwen Stefani, no Doubt, I should say, Just a Girl is like played, and I like that song a lot, and I like the group a lot. But it was during a fight song, and it was really weird because it kind of just, if you listen to the song, it's about an angry woman, and in my opinion, she's just like whining, sort of. It's not like, say, Pink, who can get like aggressive and angry and tough. In my opinion, Just a Girl's much more. It's not necessarily strong. It's kind of silly the way it sounds. I didn't know if I was supposed to laugh or not. It's just very weird. Um, and then there is a weird moment where they have Nirvana is one, like, I believe Nirvana is the only song on there with a male vocal. It's Come As You Are. And that was just kind of like, it's like, so one male song is allowed. I don't know, or singer. Anyway, that was just a little thing. Another thing I'm going to talk about is Nick Fury. A lot of us are going in there like, oh, we're going to see Samuel L. Jackson. That's pretty cool. This is basically not the same character at all, in my opinion. It's obviously set earlier, so he's younger looking, but he's nowhere near serious. Who knows what happens to him in between this movie and like the way, like, they're probably gonna have a second one. Oh, I mean, they already announced it, but they've been planning it even when they are doing this. We do see how he loses his eye, but it's really disappointing. I'm gonna tell you, that you've seen the cat in the previews that's supposed to be real cute and everything. Well, Nick Fury can't be around this thing without getting all goofy and, oh, it's a cute little kitty, and hugging it and messing with it. Well, eventually it's had, and we later find out, big surprise, that it's an alien of some sort, and it finally has enough of him talking to it and treating him like a baby or whatever, so it bats him in the eye, and that is what leads to him losing his eye or whatever. It swells up or whatever, like, so it's like, you think it's like a firefight or something heroic, but it's such a missed opportunity in my opinion, and it really belittles the whole thing. I'm going to try to explain everything about that cat real quick. It's kind of like their attempt to have a Groot type of character in it. It's, oh, like, it's cute, it's a cat. Well, all it really does, I mean, it's clearly just as intelligent as a person, at least. And I kept thinking it would be a shape changer, but all it really can do is ingest lots of stuff, and apparently it can make you swell up if it hits you, claws you. But it doesn't do that to anybody except Nick Fury. It can eat, like, I think 10 or 20 people in one swallow. Like, the special effects on it were really stupid. Like, all these tentacles come out of its mouth, but it was not, I couldn't buy it at all. They also do find the Tesseract in it, that was in Captain America First Avenger and Infinity War and so many other Marvel movies. But anyway, it can ingest that, and really it's just there so that somebody can hold on to it without getting destroyed. That's all the cat really does. The next issue, I also want to talk about, like, don't get excited about Ronan and Coulson. Like, Coulson, I didn't care he was in there anyway, like, for just a little bit, but I don't care about the character. If he had died in Avengers and never come back in S.H.I.E.L.D., the TV show, then I'd have been like, wow, this is kind of deep that we get to see him before he was killed. But he's just like anyone else, he just keeps coming back. Anyway, and then Ronan's only in there for one little part, basically, which I'm going to get into that later. I'm also going to talk about the Skrulls. The Skrulls are these alien shape changers. In the comics, as far as I know, they've always been bad. They've been around since the 60s. They're a classic Marvel, like, race. They're clearly setting up a secret invasion storyline, which is something from a few years ago. And, I mean, at this point, I'm convinced that Nick Fury gets taken over or replaced by a Skrull, because the Nick Fury we've got is completely different. But anyway, with these Skrulls, the big twist at the end is, alright, what's going on is these Kree are hunting them down, because the Skrulls infest their colonies or home planets and infiltrate them, and then there are these bad guys that have to be taken out. Well, we find out at some point that the Kree are the bad guys, and these terrorist Skrulls are actually just refugees looking for a home to call their own. And this is a clear, we're going to bring in current events. And I can't stand it when political views are used in a movie. Like this is about superheroes. This isn't like something that's going up for the Oscars, and like, get your agenda out of here. I really hate these things where the Skrulls are bad guys. Like, but we're gonna make it a twist for the readers that have been reading these stories that have been created all these decades. And now it's like Iron Man 3 had things like this. Like the Mandarin wound up not being the Mandarin from the comics. He was just a poser. And it's like, oh great, so the big twist is I just paid money to see this movie and it's not what it should be. Also, by the way, if you have an AMC movie theater near you, I highly recommend looking into Coke Rewards. With 20 Coke caps, I was able to get a free ticket, free large popcorn, and a free large drink at my local AMC. So I didn't actually pay anything to see this movie. So on to the next issue. That was the Skrull thing. I kept waiting for the like twist within a twist where we find out the Skrulls actually turn out to be bad guys and they're just posing as good guys or something. But no, that's the deal. They're good guys, and the Kree are the bad guys. Then we've got, alright, the biggest issue I'm gonna just, alright, I have is like the pro women, like, it's alright to be pro women, like Wonder Woman was a good movie, and they had like male characters that were good too, like not nearly as cool as she is, because it's her movie, but they are positive characters, like Chris Pine's character and those guys that were part of his group. In this, there's the strong women, which once again, that's fine, but it is so forced on how the men are nothing but negative or goofy. The only male in it, there's only two males in my opinion that, well, three I guess that matter. There's Nick Fury, and he's portrayed like a goofball clown that is out of character to what we've ever seen. We've got Jude Law's character, which comes off as kind of like her mentor, commanding officer in the beginning. We'll get to that, more about that. And we've got the Skrull leader Talos, who is very much in need of help. He's very smart, but you don't know if he's a good guy or bad guy for a little while until the very end. He's not, I wouldn't call him a positive male. I mean, I guess he's kind of, he needs help. He's a victim. He's a damsel in distress, but this time he's a guy. And but then it's Jude Law that's the interesting one, because like I literally, just before they revealed the twist, like 2 minutes before they did, I realized, hey, this is the only positive male in the movie that's like competent. And then sure enough, 2 minutes later we find out he's a bad guy because like he took advantage of Carol Danvers. Like she had her amnesia, got these powers, and then like he with the Kree fed her a whole false story on who she was, and they claim that they gave her the powers and that they can take them away. But yeah, so he's not positive at all. Meanwhile, Carol's got, I totally understand. She's the hero of the movie. She's supposed to be awesome. But then, like, her mentor is this woman played by Annette Bening that turns out to be the real Captain Marvel, who, in the comics from the 60s, is a male character. And I don't like when you change something from the comics. I understand the movie's not going to be 100% like the comics, but something like that's pretty drastic, and it's just to serve a point. Like, God forbid she has to look up to any male, even, like, somebody that died off. But then she finds like her best friend at this point, like at some point, who's this African American woman. They were like women in the Air Force, and the woman has a daughter, and it just really was weird to me. Like, I mean, whoever the girl's dad is conveniently not around. I don't even know if they talk about what happened to him, because probably not, because he just didn't matter. He's a man. But it felt very much like here's this girls' club with these two older women, this young girl, and Nick Fury the clown. He's like a special guest. And then, yes, it just felt very like, at one point this old man comes up to the door wondering if what's going on, because there's been a ruckus at the best friend's house, and it's just like Captain Marvel gets really territorial on him. I understand she thinks maybe he's a Skrull, but she's had no problems dispatching these Skrulls the whole movie, and I also kind of thought about if you flipped it around and made her Tony Stark all of a sudden, or any of the like the guy characters. This scene, she just was very overly aggressive. It was like somebody pumped her full of steroids or something, and she was like hulking out. It just felt very weird to me, but that's kind of random. I should probably lay out the what how we got there, but let me tell you some positive stuff. I went into it wanting to like it, but I was on guard because this is Disney and they made The Last Jedi, which was terrible in my opinion for so many reasons. But the first 45 minutes or so were pretty cool. Like, she's got these dreams where she is remembering her human life, but she doesn't know she had a human life because the Kree have lied to her. And Jude Law is like her commanding officer, maybe, and they're part of this like special forces group. And it's a really cool group. You got like this blue Kree female that's a sniper. Her and Jude Law, obviously. There's a African. Well, I guess I don't know what his nationality is, but there's a black guy played by the guy. It's the character from Guardians of the Galaxy that's a cyborg that's hunting Peter Quill down in the very beginning of the first movie, but he doesn't have his cyborg parts yet. And in a way, I thought he was the most interesting character for me in the whole movie because I want to see more about, who he was before then and stuff like that. But he's in it just a little bit, and that group was really neat. Like I'm all about watching some sci-fi special forces aliens in the Kree like structure. But then she gets captured by these Skrulls. They put her in some kind of interrogation thing where it's like they can look through her memories and she's conscious of them watching her and she's seeing her own memories that she doesn't really remember. And then the Skrulls, I think, are able to determine that they have to go to Earth because they can figure out based on her memories where these events must have taken place. And even if you can get around that, it's still hard for me to believe they can figure out which continent, which state, and all that, but who knows? I mean, it's a superhero movie. So she frees herself while she's being interrogated, and she's able to get out of... She can't get out of her shackles, but she gets out of being, like, incapacitated. And she has to fight while the shackles are still on, which also prevents her from blasting. I thought that was all very cool. I've seen it somewhere, I just can't think of where. I think maybe the pages of the X-Men during the Extinction Agenda. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. It was really cool to me for some reason. I just thought... And then the ship crashes after the fight, and she happens to land nearby where she kind of was last... Like in her adult life, was on Earth. Like it's... I'm going to assume the ship was there on purpose. Otherwise, it's like, wow, it's a good thing she didn't crash in Japan or Australia where she'd have been completely far away from the rest of the things needed for the plot. But anyway, that's where she meets Nick Fury and eventually gets reunited. She has some fights with the Skrulls, which, when you look back on it, it's like, so when you find out later the Skrulls are refugees, it really seemed weird because like the Skrulls kind of were taking the fight to her, and I don't know, it just didn't seem to make sense. They also, in my opinion, I feel like they do some backpedaling. Talos, the head Skrull, impersonates Nick Fury's boss, and I got the vibe that the boss was killed off, but like they mentioned later that he was just captured, which maybe I missed the scene when I went up for the bathroom, but I don't know. It just felt very forced, all for the purposes of a twist. I'm trying to think where it goes from there. Eventually, it becomes the movie's about her fighting the Kree and keeping these Skrulls so they can find a homeland. That's all they want is a homeland. If you heard anything about that in the news, does it sound familiar? Because it should. Anyway, that also, by the way, if you're watching this movie, like the main reason I saw it was like I don't want to miss something that's going to matter in Endgame. You're really not missing anything. The previews that have come out now where they show she's with the group, that's all you see is that she eventually links up with the group. Like Captain America and all them. You really, I don't think are going to miss anything if you don't see this movie. And it ends with her taking, like, her mission is to take these scrolls and find them a home. Like, she gives Nick Fury the pager that we see at the very end of Infinity War's end credits, and she tells him only to call her an emergency. Like, she's very bossy about it. Like God, like, you know, only an emergency. Like, I guess 2012's Avengers, where Loki was taking over the world or whatever, that didn't qualify. But, and I'm sure something did in the middle that we're gonna find out in Captain Marvel too. But we'll wait and see, I guess. But that's it. She decides to fly off with these scrolls and find them a home. I thought that was a really weak reason for her to be gone. What else? Alright, now I'm just going to tell you about various little things that kind of offended me, where the anti-male thing was pushed on in there. First of all, one of the earliest ones I can think of was Jude Law when he's sparring with her. And he's telling her, like, she's almost like about to blast him with her space powers or whatever you want to call them. And then he tells her how she has to control her emotions, meaning don't blast him, because the emotion, her anger, is what I guess what's getting her generating the energy. And he also tells her how, like, you know, if you've got to control your emotions if you want to impress me. It's very much like in Batman Begins when Liam Neeson's Ra's al Ghul tells Bruce Wayne to always mind his surroundings, and he can beat him that way. And by the end of the movie, Batman has been able to mind his surroundings and beats Ra's al Ghul. Well, later, like, you find out, like, I mean, the Kree are telling her to control her emotions so that they can keep her controlled and in check with her powers. They've lied to her that they claim they gave her the powers. Turns out she gets them from this engine, which is the Tesseract. But I'm trying to focus here. This all comes back later, and it took me a little while to realize what was going on. When she's fighting Jude Law's character in the end, he uses the same line about having to control her emotions if he wants to impress her. Well, she blasts or hits him real hard, knocks him down, and then she comes up. She's the better woman and helps pick him up from the ground. And she tells him, I don't need to be impressed, or I don't need to impress you. That's okay. That's her showing they're equals. I get it. But then it hit me then in that scene that him telling her to control her emotions is that stereotypical, terrible, chauvinistic male that's like, oh, a woman can't be president because they're too emotional. And it's like, we really had to bring it in like that's, like, he's criticizing her as a woman for being emotional. It really was like, wow, that was just, like, I can't, like, they went in that direction. Another thing that bothered me was, it's a small part, but all these little parts add up, is the Kree are like they've captured everybody except for like Captain Marvel, and they're scanning them to detect what they are. They scan the cat thing, and it's a flurful, I think it was called, and it says like race, fawful, threat level high, and then it goes. It's also that when it scans Nick Fury, it goes human, male, threat level, weak or insignificant or something, and it's like, all right, I got you. So we're gonna say men are weak. God, like, there's no way it would have happened if it was a woman. Like, I don't know. It just was like, it was very childish to me. Like we're just gonna keep hitting men. And then what was the other thing? I feel like there was another event other than like the characterization of all the men being either incompetent or bad or in need of help. It's when, alright, Ronan, the one thing he does really is he shows up with a bunch of his ships and he fires a bunch of missiles onto the planet. Captain Marvel flies off into space. She's finally just now realized that she's been falsely controlled this whole time, and she can take off whatever the monitor thing the Kree's put on her, and she's like letting loose. Which, first of all, is a problem because I get no indication that she has any limits. Like, she can just keep blasting all day. There's no known kryptonite weakness or something. Or they could at least make an effort where she's like, I can only do that like once a day or something, or I better take it easy now. But no, she has no drawbacks as far as I can tell. She literally flies through one of the ships and destroys it from within, which is cool. We're not going to talk about how we've already established that all these people have families and blah blah blah. But like you know, if she had done that to the Skrulls earlier, it would have been a catastrophe. But it only happens so that then Ronan orders a retreat. Like he wants to fall back from where they jumped from, and she had already squared off with her against him, like, and showed how tough she was, and told him to leave. And Ronan, when he says to his subordinate that he wants to retreat, the subordinate's like, he's like, "We'll come back for the weapon." The subordinate's like, "Oh, you mean the engine?" Which is the obvious thought. And then Ronan has to go, "No, for the woman." Because, like, you know, obviously he wants to figure out how he can get her and harness her power or use her or something, because that's what all men want to do. Once a woman has some power. But it really bothered me because, like, let's flip this around. Let's pretend it was Iron Man or something. And the guy, Ronan, wanted his suit or something. He would have been like, what, are we coming back for the suit? But let's say you want to say Iron, like Tony Stark, he'd be like, "No, for the human." He was no, for the man. Like, it was really forced. We got it. She's dangerous not for her powers. It's because she's a woman. I don't know. I know it really sounds like I'm being like anti-woman, but it's really not. It's just that why there's so many shots had to get taken at men directly or indirectly. I'm not even gonna get into like I guess I am actually. Is one of her flashbacks from when she's a pilot is there's some obnoxious white guy yelling out like, "You know why it's called a cockpit?" Meaning, you know, he's obviously trying to say women shouldn't be pilots and that they need male genitalia to be in the cockpit. It's just like, we're not all like that. I remember quite a few people growing up, guys, that were obnoxious like that, and it's offensive to where I feel like this movie was made to attack me on some level. I mean, obviously not me, but guys in general, particularly, especially white guys. But let me know what you thought, and if this review was at all helpful. And I'm sure I'm going to get some people come and bash me for it. Like I said, if you fit the group that this was for and you loved it, this is your Superman, but it's Captain Marvel, then I'm happy for you. But I just don't think, I can't think of movies, superhero movies, where they've come down hard on women the way men were kind of come down on like this. There might have been like Lois Lane needed help or something, but I don't think that they were portrayed. I don't know. I could be wrong about that. Please let me know. I'm sure there have been some, but this was like somebody got their dream chance to just take apart men. Thanks for watching. As you can see, I do have this little plate featuring Captain Marvel. I think her look is really cool. As I overheard a young woman in FYE, though, her boyfriend was asking her, I assume it was the boyfriend, you know, "What do you think of that Captain Marvel movie coming out?" And surprisingly, she was negative about it. She said, and I quote, "It looks like Captain America and Superman had a baby." Which I was surprised that a young woman was anti-female superhero. And I thought about, you know, she's right. I mean, it looks very much like Captain America's outfit, but with Superman's colors. I mean, which are 2/3 of Captain America's as well, but she really does just need it looks very Supergirl, actually. But anyway, that's not that big a deal. But thanks for watching. I did one more point. I wanted to contrast it with last year's Black Panther. I went into Black Panther like, oh, I hope this isn't going to be like anti-white. Like, it's obviously pro-African, which is great, and that's what you're supposed to get in Black Panther. Other than like 2 lines, one about the white boy and the colonizer, the movie didn't have anything anti-white in it. And those weren't that big a deal. Didn't ruin me from loving the movie. It was a very good movie. Captain Marvel did take shots at the other group, and